Hi scholars, we're going to be focusing on how the colonies are really going to join forces and unite for the first time. And that's because of a war that's going to make America. You might have heard of it before. It's called the French and Indian War. What I need you to do today is to set up your notebook, and you're going to be taking notes on part 1. Stop your video, pause it now, and set up your notebook to look just like this. Our notes in part 1 are going to focus on the background and setting the stage for this war. As you're looking at your notes, please pay attention to the directions as we are making our way through these slides. For right now, you needed to focus on what were those major European countries that really controlled a vast majority of North America. So in your notes, please fill out the following. As of 1754, there are 3 European countries that controlled a majority of North America. They are France, Great Britain, and Spain. When you take a look at this map, you'll see that the French are in the green area, looking at our key. The British have the red areas, and we also have Spanish, which are kind of a yellow orangish color. We do have a couple areas that are in dispute, and that's a gray or a light purple color. And as you can see, much of the area between French, Spain, and Britain is kind of up for grabs at this point. So this is a U.S. history class, and we understand that. And we've learned about British colonies that eventually became the United States. However, we also have to acknowledge that there are other major settlements in North America besides the British colonies that we've learned about. One area that we have not discussed is Quebec. It's the first French settlement, and that was established in 1603. It's in modern-day Canada. The first English settlement, which we have learned about, was Jamestown in 1607. So take a look at this map, and you see again those British claims, French claims, Spanish, and even Russian claims in the North America. Quebec was important in the colonies. It's a large settlement, but it's mainly used as a trading center. The English colonies developed along the Atlantic coast from Maine to Georgia. By 1732, there are 13 colonies in total. These 13 colonies bordered French and Spanish colonies. The French were on the northern side and the Spanish on the southern side. It's nothing new for us to know that Europe was competing against one another tremendously. They have been fighting for wealth, for territory, for quite a while. However, both Britain and France were at odds over one territory in specific. They both thought that they had claimed the land that was valuable for trade, and that was the North America's Great Lakes and Ohio and Mississippi rivers. If you take a look at this map, I have it circled in red. This is the contested areas. We can see the Great Lakes as well as the Ohio and Mississippi rivers. The blue area is France's territory. The red, again, is that British colonies that we have learned and studied so far. And that circled kind of grayish area, well, that's also up for contest. So basically, it's important for us to know that even though we thought the British were the primary settlers of the area, obviously they're not. We also have French who have claims on some land, and we have Spain as well. Throughout the 1700s, the French and the English struggled for control over that one area, the Ohio River Valley. They had settled that area, both colonies, both countries, and French had already settled that area, making it a pretty dominant fur trade. It was very good for their economy. England also wanted a part of that, and they pushed into it to hope to get involved with that trade. Obviously, France, who's making some money off of this, didn't like it, and they thought it was going to cut into their profits. So at the very beginning of this time period, we have 1.5 million British citizens living in that area. and we have about 90,000 French citizens in the colonies. So I want you to stop this video and think to yourself and make a prediction. How many people think that the Native Americans are going to fight with the French? And how many of you feel like they're going to fight with the British? Why? Looking at those numbers, who would you fight with? Or maybe there's more to the story that we need to learn. So obviously we have Native Americans who are inhabiting and living in this area. They have for hundreds of thousands of years. But the French and the Indians are going to form alliances. Both France and England traded with the Native Americans. France was extremely involved in the Native Americans. They took time to get to know them as people, to learn about their culture, their religions, and their language. The British, not as much. The French traders generally treated Native Americans with respect, and they didn't set up these large settlements that the British typically did. The allies of the French later became the Huron Native Americans and the Algonquian tribes. English also had some alliances with Native Americans. The English were more disruptive than the French, and they were also more aggressive, which we've learned, especially in the trading world. The English had set up large settlements and forts on known Native American lands, and the English were also allies with the Iroquois Confederation. So our Native Americans need to choose sides. The French were outnumbered, but were better fighters and had most of the Native Americans on their side simply because of the relationship that they had established with the Native Americans. Because they had treated them better, because they also had allowed them to take part in that fur trade to make some money, Native Americans generally sided with the French. We call this the French and Indian War because it was the French and their Indian, as the French called them during that time period. So Native American, more respectfully what we would say today, allies against the British and their Indian allies of the Iroquois Confederacy. So when you take a look at this map, you can see, again, some of this disputed areas. We have some French claims, we have some British and some Spanish claims, and then there's areas that have a mixture of colors. Take a look at that map and you will see specifically that there are British French claims that are disputed, and those are blue and reds, and then there's also some Spanish and British claims that are disputed, and that's parts of Georgia that are that yellow and red. Most Native Americans, as we mentioned, sided with the French because they were lesser of two evils. It's not like the Native Americans thought that the French were great people, but the French mostly wanted to trade and trap beaver. They did not want to colonize and take over the land. The Native Americans feared that the British did want to take over the lands, and so they were the lesser of two evils. Plus, French missionaries, wanted to live with Native Americans and learn their customs like we mentioned above. They learned more about their culture and their language while also trying to honor it. British, however, pretty much just took over the land, and they mistreated the first Americans while ignoring their cultures. All right, that's it for today as far as the lesson is concerned. What I need you to do now is to compare and contrast the French and the British in regards to the relationships, how they treated the first Native Americans. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to read some background information, which we just went over. If you need to go through that slideshow again, you can. And you're going to compare and contrast each. Consider the treatment and the relationships that the Native Americans had with both groups of people. And then you're going to add those notes to those slides. You don't have to actually add them to the slides. I had you draw a compare and contrast Venn diagram already in your notes, if you remember, from our very first page. So it's right down there, the French and the British. If you want to add the slide in by typing, you may, or you can just simply add it by pencil into your notes. These are your notes for this section. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me, but there is no need to submit them. I will have a key provided for you in tomorrow's lesson.